how did this online influence the quality of board meetings? That's what we say, that you don't need to travel. I mean, you go online. I mean, if you see that the boards could possibly change, its operations, it could be more reachable at any point just online.
Yes, two things, especially in international board, where people used to fly in for the board meeting. It's the time and cost savings are huge if you're doing online. On the other hand side, the quality of discussion is not as deep. So my understanding is in boards where people travel from a long distance, we will see maybe a half-half situation. So we will still have physical meetings, especially when we talk about strategy and when we talk about people, we need to see them. I have a very strange experience. We just hired a CFO for a large company all over video interview. And it was a bit awkward, but we had to do it. We were under time pressure. But next step, we're in the process of selecting a CEO externally. And that's, it's a bit awkward, only video. So we will see. But coming back to the boards, I think that we will see a mixture of both video meetings and physical meetings, Mm-hmm. And when you have a board where travel is not a bigger issue, say a Swiss board with Swiss members only, I would say for the quality of reasons, maybe still a dominance of physical meeting because the quality is better. However, a lot of regular meetings in a board, in a management board, a more of day-to-day operational business, we will see a huge acceptance in the future of video conferencing because it's just more effective. People don't need to travel. And B, my experience is obviously I'm doing a lot of video meetings now in the last few weeks. People are more to the point, a video meeting is always half the time what it would be physically. And that's also appreciated by a lot of people. So I think this Corona virus is a big promotion agent for digital workplaces, and that will not go back to the old level, and also schooling, if you look at our kids, they do quite good, I think, homeschooling through internet, also video conferencing. So do they really need to go every day 8 hours to school physically? Maybe not. Maybe there will be a little less physical teaching in the future and a little more video teaching. I don't know. In my case, yes, my daughter is really missing the physical interaction with her peers, and I think most kids are the same. So learning is good through computer. I mean, our kids are very computer literate, as we know, as parents, but they really miss the physical interactions with peers. So obviously schools will not disappear, but it's interesting. Yeah, it's interesting what's going on.
Yeah, in our university, we made the survey because, students are on distant learning for some time.
Yeah.
And we, we asked them a few questions. So they really miss a lot this community, their peers. But our university thinks of some, blended model, like 3 days on campus, 2 days individual work, more research work.
Yeah.
So that could be some blended model. We could come up with some interesting ideas. And so, Heinrich, coming back to boards, how would you define the role of board in crisis? I just, maybe I will make this question a bit longer. Especially if you could think of advisory boards, which is much more the case here in Ukraine. We are not obliged under our legislation to have a board like in Switzerland. Our boards are not, legally responsible for the decisions, for the successes and losses of the company. But still, I think the role of the board, even as an advisory body, could be quite important now. How do you see it, and how do you see the changes?
Well, I think it's funny because I think we talked about the crisis management at our last seminar when I was there, it's a very important statement for me. It's like the first role of a board is to detect a crisis, you know. In general speaking, a board needs to think long term, you know. A board needs to think strategically. So a board needs to think probably even more than a management board. What strategic crises, threats are there and could threat our business, you know. So we always had this in a good board. You always have once or twice a year, you have a broad-ranging conversation about board members and the management, what type of crises could hit our business. And I remember it very well in December, shortly before Christmas, we had the annual board meeting of a very large company, and we were celebrating ourselves on really excellent figures of 2019, both top line and bottom line. And I said I was the awkward guy in the room, and I said, that's all very nice, but are we really prepared for a hit? And I didn't think of a virus. I thought more of a big economic crisis, to be honest, of an interest rate shock, something like that, or just a big recession. And I asked the management, are you prepared? Do you have a scenario that we very sharply will decline in business? And yes, now we have this scenario caused by Corona, and in that company, we're very well prepared. So first statement is, as a board, always, you have to think about things that could happen and nobody believe it could happen. Then once it's apparent, and thank for us, it was all apparent early, mid-March, the latest, once it is apparent, we have a crisis and everyone is affected, then you make sure as a board that the management has a crisis management mode. So they need to work differently. And in all the companies I serve, I'm very proud that without a lot of pressure from the board, I found out there is crisis management going on. So the CEO has his top people in a daily call. I would also highly recommend now with video, obviously, and physically to create a war room, you know, a physical meeting space that is big enough where you can also physically meet with the rules, you know, the distancing rules, and where you have a lot of video conferencing to zoom in other people. In one case, when you run an operation with 4,500 people, you know, it's complex, you know. So you need a crisis organization that is involving all the different operations of the firm, you know, sales, marketing, production, finance. So make sure you have these crisis models. And as a board, you shouldn't interfere too much on that. So the last thing the managers need is a board that is hyperactive, you know, or a board that is panicking. But nevertheless, in all the boards I serve, we have now more video meetings, mainly updates from the management. But the pace from that, especially if you have the feeling they're doing a good job, they're managing the crisis as good as they can, then you don't have weekly calls. I think that's a nuisance for the management. So we have probably, we got a lot of emails, so we see what they're working on. And then you have probably a fortnightly video call with the board, where we stand, you know, what are the issues. Secondly, now, what are the topics where you should, as a board, you should put your emphasis on? One is certainly cash is king, you know, cash is king. So liquidity management is obviously a basic thing, you know. With liquidity management comes scenario planning, you know. On all the boards, I insist on having 3 scenarios for the next 3 months. A normal scenario where you think, yeah, it will go away and go back to normal till May or June. So obviously negative impact on the business, but not severe. The second scenario is severe impact on the business. And the third scenario I also want to see is a crash scenario where all these measures don't work as it looks now, and the economy will really, really crash. You know, so I'm talking of sales of minus 50%. What does that mean, you know? And I don't believe that we will see this scenario, but it's very healthy if you know the figures about that scenario also. So scenario planning, and on that I want an update fortnightly from the management. Then obviously also in Switzerland, and I think also in Ukraine, you're required from the government, from the law, you make sure that health and safety precautions are in place. So obviously any board has the aim, we want to stay in business as good as possible, but B, also we need to protect our people. And here I learned a lot of details in the last few weeks, how you can separate people, how you work with different shifts, how you, for example, make sure that's something I invest, that people who deputize each other are not meeting physically. It's very important that, say a CFO and his deputy, they obviously should not sit in the same office together, and they should avoid any physical contact, just in case somebody falls ill, the deputy is not ill. It's simple safety precautions you learn also from airlines. And then we make sure that the production goes on. So obviously, I think a lot of companies found out that more people can do home office than we previously thought. But obviously, if you're in manufacturing, for example, you cannot put the manufacturing process to your house. So then in the manufacturing company I'm chairman, we found out that a lot of finance people, also technicians, people who calculate and do drawings, can work from home. But obviously the people who are in the workshop and are manufacturing our pumps, we're making pumps for chemical industry, they cannot. And there we make sure, that the safety precautions are very strict, that for example, you make sure that people can have lunch in a safe environment, people make sure who are risks, so for example, diabetes patients, that they feel especially safe, if they come to work, or you try to give them a home job. So you need a lot of creativity in these things, and you make sure that production can go on, because clients, in our case, customers want new pumps. Customers, obviously, pharma industry will invest in the next few months. That's good for the business, but you need to be able to deliver. Supply chain is a big topic, in crisis management. Make sure that you have enough suppliers, that you have alternative suppliers. And here I think that crisis has a big impact on supply chain management. So all these companies, obviously, who relied on a cheap single source from China, they will not do this anymore. And there I see a lot of opportunities for companies in Europe, to get business back that was shifted to China, mainly China or Asia. I see business opportunities there, that you can prove. Even in Ukraine, we're a safe supplier. We're able to deliver components, which some producers or many producers in China were not able over weeks. So second source thinking is very important. Then you make sure, that's also a big operation when you're international. You make sure that you understand what the government is offering, because governments are offering a lot of support, but it's different from country to country. It's not 100% clear. So I want to be our management to be aggressive going after government support, because it's just a necessity. Obviously, as a liberal, I don't like that. I don't like government interference, but here it's a necessity that what governments are offering in tax incentives, in cash, in loans. In Switzerland, for example, they had quite a quick and effective loan program from the government, especially for small businesses, managed by the commercial banks. And I think that's quite clever, because it's unbureaucratic. Mm-hmm. And you make sure that all your managers know what they can apply for and what they cannot apply for. Even if you have a good cash position at the start of the crisis, So, and last but least, maybe a minor issue is IT security. We see that if you work more from home, you see more vulnerability. in your IT system. So you make sure that this is also taken care of, you know. And the last thing I found out, and that's an interesting observation, I think, in some corporations where I get feedback, where I'm on the board, but also get feedback from clients, we didn't communicate enough externally. And the message is we're open for business, you know, we're open for business. You need to communicate, especially on social media, because it's cheap, it's fast, it's effective. You need to communicate repeatedly to your clients and customers. We're open for business. We can do this, we can do that for you, because a lot of clients I found out think, oh, they're closed, you know. And I'm take the example is our car dealership, you know, which is a big business. A lot of friends called me and said, "Oh, must be very bad for you because you're closed now." And I said, "No, we're not wrong. We're not closed. We cannot open the showroom, but we are allowed by the government to have one-to-one sales speeches, sales advising, you know, through internet, also physically, so people can test drive a car, people can buy a car, and people didn't know that, you know, that at the beginning. That was interesting. So we had to communicate through videos, through social medias. Yes, we're open for business. Here are the rules, and it works pretty well. And once people realize, they're open also for maintenance, they're open, they come again and bring us business, you know. And that's important, you know. Mm-hmm. And another point I found out, which is also interesting, you can learn a lot from each other. So if you talk, companies, one big issue here in Switzerland is the availability of masks, you know. And I found out through a friend of mine who is a commercial dealer with masks, you know, I could help a lot of companies because I just let the word go around that this guy is able to deliver it to a fair price, you know, masks. And that was extremely helpful because you cannot force your people, you know, to come to the workshop and don't hand them out the masks. So that was very appreciated. And I think that's also a role of a board member, that you can help with concrete actions like this, you know. Mm. And also, last but not least, you know, I think a board member should help wherever he can to support the business. Mm-hmm. And make sure that customers know what we can do, what we don't do, you know.
Maybe it's the first experience of the owner with the board in crisis. They didn't live through the crisis yet. I mean, everything was very well, you know, beautiful board, nice company, pleasant meetings. You know, what would be, you know, the main issues we should look at, you know, to be sure that the board is doing its job well?
Well, it's all these topics I elaborated, you know, especially the chairman should make sure that you work on this topic and that your management is up to the topic. Mm. And obviously the time engagement for the board is bigger than in normal crisis, you know, than in normal days. Obviously, I said you should not oversteer and you should not over interfere, but the availability must be higher, you know, and also the option a board member has to support a client, a business with certain topics, like I did, you know, providing masks or providing new customers is very much appreciated, you know. Mm-hmm. And I mean, obviously, if a board is existing and works together and members know each other well, it's easier than in one case. I'm involved. We will have a literally new board end of April. And that's also an international board, and that's quite challenging, you know, because to form a new board and to form a new team spirit over video, because we cannot travel in May. I'm sure maybe we can have a physical board meeting in June, but I don't think we can. That the travel bans in Europe will be lifted by May. So we need to do the first few meetings we need to do over video. That's quite a challenge. And obviously it's a challenge for the chairman because he needs to prepare this well. You need if you have 8 members, if you have 8 members on video, you need to have a script, a scenario for this first meeting. So everyone is learning, yeah. Everyone is learning.
And so then how would the role of the chairman change in this crisis situation?
Well, that's one point I mentioned. I think a video meeting, especially with board members that don't know each other well because they're new in the job, needs careful preparation and scripting. Otherwise, it's just a chaos. And secondly, I think you have more bilateral calls, video meetings with your CEO. Mm-hmm. But also there, if you realize that the crisis management, I'm chairman in one company where at the beginning, I tested the CEO with a few questions. Have you thought of that? Had you thought of this? And any answer was yes, it's done. That's my solution. So I felt very comfortable. I said, wow, he's up to his task. And then I don't want the daily update from him, because he and his colleagues, they have a lot of work to do now. So I keep in the background and we have maybe a weekly call where he talks about the biggest issues and the biggest sorrows, pains he has. And here it's my favorite topic, if chairman and CEO trust each other, I think that's very valuable for the CEO. If there is no personal trust, then it can be quite awkward also in a crisis, because you don't have an open conversation. So, and my general learning is from this crisis, it's a brutal selection mechanism in managers. In the crisis, you see which managers are excellent and which are not up to their task. It's brutal. The transparency is much higher than in normal business days. Yeah, and I think a lot of people will find an early end to their career because we found out they're just middle-class managers, Some and other talents you see, in the crisis you see people raise, above their normal level also of competence and engagement. So that's from a board view, also from a boss's view, is very interesting and helps you to make selections about further promotions.
You started actually to answer my next question. What hard decisions did you have to take? Is it, maybe you had to change the CEO now at this situation, and is it a good decision to change the CEO at this point?
A very good question. Luckily, I'm in no position where we had to change the CEO, because I think that would be quite difficult, but you need to do it. If you see in a crisis that the CEO is totally incompetent or is just overcharged, you have to act. But then you have probably made a mistake before, to be honest, you made the mistake before. I have not encountered such a situation in my role, so I'm fortunate. But I'm sure there are companies who now realize it's really time for a change. In one company board we have decided before the crisis to go for a new CEO, because we are in a turnaround and there is a strong consensus that the present CEO is not capable of building a new company. So we had a brief discussion, yes, should we postpone this process now? And we just decided yesterday, no, we don't change the process or we don't stop it. We need anyway a few months to interview candidates, and we're comfortable with the present CEO that he is the right man for the crisis, but he's not the right man for the next 10 years, So in that case, yes, we had a brief discussion. Should we stop the CEO process, selection process, and say, okay, it's postponed for a year, and that would be also, in my view, the wrong answer. So we said, no, we carry ahead with the search. But to be honest, the situation is a bit difficult because I think, and that's legitimate. People don't want to really switch jobs in a crisis. So let's put it the other way. The bar, is to quit the job and say, okay, I resign from this job, I join this company as CEO. This bar is higher. So in this process I'm in now, I said we must also take in consideration as probably the top candidates they won't join in the end. This is also a risk that you have. As they say, no, the uncertainty about Corona is too big. I don't want to join. That you feel in interviews. But in the same company, I must say, we hired a new CFO who was willing to take the risk, quit his job, and start in October. So you find people, yeah. But we could feel that from the beginning of the interview process, that guy was quite motivated to do this career. For him, it was a career move, So yeah, no, the labor market is not dead, and people are still willing to switch jobs, to take on new challenges. But I'm sure most candidates are a bit more conservative or more reluctant than in normal times, yeah.
Heinrich, then do you think there is a difference between family company and a corporate company at this moment of crisis? I mean, if it's a family company, then most probably the owner would come back to the active management of the company, and then how the interaction with the boards, does it change or not?
I hope not. It shouldn't change. If the family, like most companies I'm familiar with, works with a more or less professional board, they also will do that in the crisis. And I think family businesses have the advantage that the purpose of the business is clearer to the employees, and the employees are more loyal to the company than maybe in an anonymous corporation. So I think and family-owned businesses can also normally act decisively and swiftly. I think there are even chances here. One topic we discuss a lot in the boards is where are our opportunities here, because in any crisis you see opportunities. And we, looking forward in one board, we have a board meeting. I guess it's physical with huge distance in a huge room, 7 members, you can do that. We have 2 topics: Corona update, where we stand, what's the impact on our business for 2020, but also where do we see opportunities? And with the opportunities, I mean buying companies, expand business, because that's a very banal statement. Any crisis, is a shake-up of a market, and weaker players will give up, and weaker players will ask bigger players to take over. I had a few weeks ago a long conversation with the CEO, who is an automotive supplier, and he had to completely shut down his global production in Switzerland, Germany, Czech Republic, China, Mexico, because all the customers are automotive players. So he's shutting down for 2 months, but he said we will survive this because we have a strong balance sheet, we have strong shareholders, 2 big families. They give us more money if necessary. My main task is now to find the acquisition targets for the second half of 2020, And he said that's my main job now in the next few weeks, because we shut down the production, have unemployment benefits, we're getting through the crisis, but we see what's next, and that's the entrepreneurial spirit I like, and that you see more probably in family-owned businesses than in corporations, although a good corporation, large corporation also thinks, okay, what are the opportunities for us here? And that's an interesting thing. And you only can take opportunities, obviously, if you have a strong balance sheet. So only the fittest will survive, that's for sure,
Mm-hmm. Heinrich, what would you advise both to managers and to boards in these new circumstances? Maybe you touched upon a bit, but just to sum up, maybe, do you need to interact more often? Do you need to, to involve other people to the discussions? Maybe, some middle managers also. I'm just guessing, but I would like to hear your experience, and some of your advices.
Of course, in the company, and as I said, externally, the customers communicate, and use all the modern technology, use social media, use video casts, use video conferencing, use the good old telephone calls, because a lot of people are unsecure, are maybe even still in panic. So in one company, we had this issue that some of the people who are considered to be high risk, health risk, are really frightened to come back to work. So I said to the CEO, now what you have to do, and he did that, is you call them one-to-one. It's just a simple message. Look, we know you're a diabetic, or we know that you have high blood pressure and you're a risk group, whatever that means. So we make anything possible, that you feel safe, but you have to come back. And that's a tricky task. And if you don't do it, people think, oh, the employer doesn't take my concerns, my fears serious, The second thing is what I said, communicate to customers, say we're open for business. We're here for you, you can have an offer, we can deliver goods or cars or services. Just ask, And the third thing is not only the CEO, also line managers, see the customers, call them, call the customers, and make yourself available, And it's very interesting. It's a tight balance, I had an interesting conversation with a guy who is actually my tailor, so he makes nice suits and shirts, and obviously he's very heavily hit from this situation because he cannot receive clients anymore, and he said, he called all his customers, and a few reacted very strangely, most said, I know your concerns, and of course I order something new, because otherwise they're dying, but it needs a bit tact, because nobody needs a new suit. That's the problem. Nobody needs a new car, so you need some tact. But if you don't do that, people think, oh, he's out of business anyway, and I won't come back. So it's not wrong to call customers, also to call customers of old, say, just how are you? We're here. Can we offer you something? So I think most people must be a bit more aggressive, also in a positive way. On sales, on finding the right tone, this is not easy, especially if you're selling luxury goods, that nobody really needs,
And how would the normal board meeting look like now? I mean, you told me one meeting you're searching for new opportunities in this crisis,
yes.
Just checking how it's going. But now, just like the regular agenda, how would you define it now?
I would strongly recommend not only Corona, so you would start with the Corona update. What's the Corona impact on our business so far? And B, what we see as the realistic scenario, what are the exit scenario? What is the impact? If I own a hospital, it's different than if I own a car dealership. If I'm in construction, most of construction work is still going on. It's different than if I own a hotel group or a restaurant. So what I see, businesses are affected in quite a different way. You have businesses that are totally shut down, income is zero, and you have businesses where, like in construction, it's a bit slow. We might have some supply chain issues, but basically we're running our operation as in normal times. It's just slower, So it's very depending on the business, but I would strongly recommend not to give up the strategy work. So, for example, in the company I'm chairman, we started in November. We started because we have new CEO, new management team, new chairman. So obviously we want to do a new strategy. And the CEO and I had a quick discussion a few weeks ago. Shall we stop this? I said, no, boss, no. Why? Why? Why should we stop the strategy work, the expansion plans we have, because we believe in the future? And I think that's also important in a board, and especially the tone from the top, make sure your people know there is a future and there is a life, also a business life after Corona, you know. So it would be total mistake just to focus entirely on Corona crisis management. No, but obviously any board meeting should start with that. And then you thought about strategy, you talk about expansion plans, and you also talk, like in any good board meeting, about your people, you know, how are our key people performing?
Mm-hmm. Great.
Yeah, so succession planning, as you ask, you know, should not be in any company. Succession planning processes for the key people should not be postponed or interrupted. It's just something you have to do anyway. And in some cases, you might precipitate the exit of a key person when you have a good successor. You know, in other cases, it might be difficult to find an external successor right now. In these few weeks of uncertainty, then you can postpone this a few weeks, but not indefinitely.
Mm-hmm. Great, Heinrich. I mean, it was extremely interesting for me. I learned a lot.
Thank you.
I learned a lot, and I'm sure that others will also hear something interesting and even inspiring for them, no matter that, you know, we are in a difficult situation. Still we, you know, we have to believe in future. I liked, you know, how you defined it. That we should
yes,
show, you know, ourselves and our stakeholders that there is a future after all this.